officially live. Not in the app yet. You're good whenever.
What's happening, guys? How you doing? This is Mike Roncesvalles from Live Well, and I'm just super glad to be with everybody again today for our Friday live event. On Fridays, we do spirituality, so it's just a time where we try to give people some encouragement on how to improve your spiritual life and help people just begin to look a little bit deeper. You know, as we're going into the weekend, everybody's got plans, and we start to just get into party mode. And what are we doing? It's going to be great. It's going to be fun, and all the all the work around the house. That's one thing for me is you work at home and then you go work at the house, right? So I want to just say, what would it look like for us if we started to take Fridays, just this 12 o'clock time, right at lunch, and say, okay, let's just start to focus on looking at meaning and purpose and trying to prepare for the weekend in some ways with a sense of, okay, I want my life to be more than just the grind of every day and the grind of work, and maybe you've got kids and you're trying to get them to school, or a spouse and do the stuff with your spouse to make them feel loved and honored and valued, and all the stuff. And how do we back up from that and intentionally allow ourselves to just lean into, man, I want my days to look different. I want my weekends to look different. I want my life to be full of meaning and purpose. And that's really what spirituality is. That's what faith does for us. So hopefully that's you, and I hope you guys get encouraged. I've been thinking a lot about what to talk about. There's so much going on, I think, for all of us. And we just been through an election. The world's kind of wild right now, right? I think some people are super happy, like really, really happy. Other people are not, like not happy at all. And regardless of where you fall in that camp, I think the truth is there's still a God that's bigger than we are, that's not surprised by any of this, who's got a plan for your life and a plan for us. And we've got to figure out how to align ourselves with that truth, right? I mean, if we just get pulled in the direction of what's going on around us in this world, we're just stuck, right? We're stuck in things we have zero control over. And I think it gets harder when we feel like the world's so unpredictable. And again, I don't care where you're at on the election. One thing we can say for sure, it was super unpredictable, right? Like, who knew what was going to go on? And I've been feeling like that for months. I'm like, I can't tell. And I think that sort of uncertainty with the outcomes is, I don't think it's just me, right? I think that's part of what we've all experienced in this election cycle. But honestly, for me, I feel like it's been even worse all the way back into COVID. You look at what is going to be 4 freaking years ago, which I can't believe 4 years ago, we hit this wall of uncertainty. And I don't know that we've really fully recovered. I think for the first time, a lot of us dealt with just this belief that, man, I don't know what's coming next. And so the world kind of seems like it's getting more unsafe, I think. Some of you, I believe, would agree with that. It's probably not. If I'm just honest with you, the world's probably not any more unsafe than it used to be. Clearly, this world is broken, messed up, and for millennia, we've been having to deal with just the stress of getting through a day and getting through a week and getting through a year. That's called life. That's the brokenness of our world, and it is not all peak experiences. That's true, right? There's good times and there's bad times. I don't think we've been as keenly aware of how messed up the world is and how broken the world is, especially in the Western world. Like if you have a phone and access to the internet, you probably just don't know because we don't live in kind of the conditions that a lot of people live in the third world. Like some people don't know where they're getting food tonight. They don't know like what real safety feels like. I feel very safe all the time. I go to bed at night. I am not worried about whether I have food in the morning. I'm not worried about someone breaking in my house. That's not how the rest of the world has lived. And so people that live in different cultures, man, they have it different. But for us, we've never been exposed to the kind of information that we have. And I think that's what makes the world feel more unsafe. It's just all the connection we have to social media and just media in general and podcast, and I literally am addicted to information. You can ask anyone in my family. I struggle to not be reading something about something, right? So in the last 4 months it's been the election, right? But I'll listen to podcasts about how awesome cold plunges are, and I'll listen to podcasts about what the solutions to anxiety are, and I'll watch and read articles about what it's like to live in another country. I just am constantly bombarding myself with all the information. You are too, but I think that information it's like a two-edged sword. It's awesome. It's amazing to have all the information. Our kids are smarter. My kids so much smarter than me. It's wild. I'm amazed at their ability to think things through at a deep level. I was not like that at their age. So the information comes with this awesome side. But man, the other piece is that we're exposed to all the junk too, right? I mean, when I was a kid, I could walk around. My cousin and I, we would walk around the orange groves up on North Merritt Island, Florida, in the middle of the citrus farm that we lived in the middle of, and man, we carried guns. I'm talking like 10 years old, shooting kind of whatever we wanted to. There's nobody around. We'd drive in cars. It's great. Before we were 16, we were driving around in cars. Just let's go to the store. Little did we know that we probably could have got arrested for driving at 13 and 14 years old. But that's just the world that we live. My parents were fine with it. They probably didn't know, in all honesty. They had no idea that we were doing some of the stuff we were doing. But we didn't have the information, right? So I could just go out. My parents were like, they're fine, because they hadn't heard about human trafficking. They hadn't heard about all the stuff with guns. They haven't heard, right? No big deal. So the world feels really unsafe. But the world's really not any more unsafe than it's ever been. That's the truth of the matter. And I've looked at like why this feeling of being unsafe and anxiety is so pervasive. And I think in some ways it's related to what I call psychological flexibility. And psychological flexibility it's just the idea that we have the ability to feel and think with openness while moving life in a direction that's aligned with our goals and our value. And it empowers us to think about all that life has for us, right? Like when you're psychologically flexible, you can kind of just accept that there's good in the world and there's bad in the world. We can accept that there's good in me and bad in me, right? So we have the ability to kind of shift cognitive sets, to shift the way we think about things really easily. And some people are born with that, right? Other people aren't. Other people, we just struggle to accept, like, just and be open to different ways of thinking about the information that we come in contact with every day. what that does is it puts us in a situation where if we can be psychologically open, we can kind of accept the brokenness, but we can also accept the beauty. We can accept the brokenness of our world, and we can accept the beauty of our world, and we can just move through it, right? It's just like this radical acceptance. So you can have the highs and you can have the lows. But people without psychological flexibility, they're so afraid of the lows. They're like, I don't want to have that kind of experience. I don't want to deal with anxiety. I don't want to deal with feeling down or sad. But guess what? You can't have just the highs and not the lows. If you get rid of the lows, you get rid of the highs. And what it leaves you with is just sort of this flat, very rigid way of viewing the world. And there's a lot of you that are stuck in that. There's a lot of you that are scared right now because of this election. And the reason you're scared is because you're just stuck feeling like I cannot accept the uncertainty of what's coming next. And let me tell you something. You're no more uncertain today than you were last year this time or 10 years ago. So my encouragement to you as we talk through this, and I'm going to get to the spiritual part of this, but I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork, because my encouragement is we need to really pursue psychological flexibility, because what it does is it lets us face our pain without judgment. Does that make sense? So if you're willing to look at the brokenness of our world, you're willing to say, man, there's just some things I don't like and are tough and hard, and I don't like the way it is, but I can accept it and I can face it. It allows you to sort of begin to experience some control over your negative emotion. Negative emotion's tough because if you're one of these rigid people and you're just like, man, I don't want the highs, I don't want the lows, I want to control. What that does is it takes all the negative emotion that's normal, like literally normal, and it puts you in a position where you don't let yourself experience it. So think about, like, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I'm disappointed, I'm sad, I'm scared. Like those kind of emotions, what if you don't have the psychological flexibility, you push it down, you repress it. That's the psychological term, right? You repress it. And when you repress stuff like that, it's like putting a ball under the water, right? So if you've been to the pool, you put a ball under the water. So you put one ball under the water, and then you put another ball under the water, and then you repress another emotion, and you repress another emotion. Before you know it, you got 13 balls under the water, right? And think about that. How much energy does it require for you if you've got all these balls under the water, every muscle in your body's contracted, just trying to keep everything down? Some of you feel like that right now, just so overwhelmed, trying to just manage all the brokenness, and I don't want to feel this way, and I don't like it, and I can't stand it, and it's uncertain, and it's miserable, right? And then what is it? One little ripple that comes along, and those balls don't float gently above the surface, right? They just explode, and our emotions explode. So the lie is, if I just repress and I don't feel the negative and I don't let myself kind of experience the anxiety, then I'm in control. The truth is, if you don't let yourself feel emotion, and especially feel the negative emotion, you're absolutely vulnerable to it. The power comes with embracing the emotion, whether it's good or bad, just like embracing the reality of where we're at and embracing the uncertainty of where we're at. Some of you need to hear that today. Like, you need to hear you can't control what comes next, and that's okay. We're going to be okay. We're going to move through this. So why do we push all that emotion down? Well, it's because we're really trying to avoid pain. We're trying to avoid uncomfortable emotion. I think in some ways that's human. I mean, I totally get that. Like, no one loves feeling stressed. No, that's not true. Some people love feeling stressed. I think they kind of get off on it. But I think that a lot of people would say, I just don't like feeling depressed, and I don't want to feel bored. And as humans, we want to get rid of that emotion. And so what we do when we repress and we kind of just embrace this psychological inflexibility is we're trying to avoid the pain. By the way, that's where addiction comes from. Some of you need to hear that today too. Like, addiction comes from a deep desire not to experience negative emotion. And I'm not just talking about addiction to drugs and alcohol. I am talking about that. But I'm also talking about addiction to shopping, Amazon, right? I'm talking about addiction to social media. Some of you can't put your phone down. You're watching this live stream on your phone. Addiction to food. Some of you that are just emotionally eating, like you eat to feel better, to feel something good, to release dopamine, right? Pornography, won't even get into it. Like, I can't tell you at Live Well in our clinics how often we have people that are addicted to pornography. And by the way, it's not just men. A lot of people feel like pornography is just men. It's not just men. A lot of women are struggling now with just this addiction to this thing that I can click on, or on my computer or whatever, and I can get these images and they can release some dopamine and I can get away from all that negative stuff. So that's the whole idea of this repression, is that it gets you away from the pain. But the problem is the more you run from your pain, the more controlled by your pain you are. The more you run from the fear that you're experiencing right now and the uncertainty, the more you're controlled by the fear and the uncertainty. Psychological flexibility allows us to live fully while acknowledging that the pain, the bad stuff, the negative stuff, the things that you're struggling with are part of life. And by cultivating flexibility, like taking the good and the bad and changing perspectives and seeing the good and the bad in me and the good and the bad in you, we can embrace the entirety of our life. It like gives us our life back in some ways. So, all right, this is our spiritual day, right? This is, if you're on the Live Well app, you're on the Live Well coaching platform, Friday is about spirituality. What is the connection to psychological flexibility and spirituality? Well, I mean, I'm just going to start with what I believe is just a reality. Psychological flexibility is what we are created for. It is super biblical. If you read through the pages of Scripture, you're going to find that the idea of accepting kind of the totality of our experience and not running from our pain and not is part of what God has kind of created us to live in. I'll give you some examples. Number one, I think if you look at Scripture, you're going to see pain is a part of life's journey. Like your fear, your anxiety, just the stuff that you're dealing with that you're not crazy about right now, it's part of life's journey. And if you look at John, I pulled some scriptures because I wanted you to see it's not just me making this up. So I pulled some scriptures. In John chapter 16, it says, in this world, you will have troubles. In this world, you're going to have troubles. There's going to be moments where I don't like how I feel right now. I don't like this relationship I'm dealing with. I don't like how you treated me. I don't like how bad I feel and how scared I am about my job or what's going to happen next year or next month. But in John it says, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So that's Jesus saying, look, man, pain's a part of life. Like, anxiety is a part of life. Stress is a part of life. But take heart, this battle's been won. Like this too shall pass. You ever heard that? This too shall, whatever you're going through right now, it will pass. And there's a God that's bigger than us that clearly has the world in his hands. He spoke the world into existence. He can handle an election. He can handle your situation at work. He can handle whatever brokenness is going on in your marriage. And I know some of it's hard. He can handle the kid that's addicted to drugs or alcohol. He can handle your addiction. God is bigger than anything that this world can throw at us. So that's number one. Pain is a part of life's journey. Psychological flexibility is what allows you to acknowledge that. Number two, you've got to turn towards your suffering, like this inherent suffering of this world, with faith. So just as psychological flexibility encourages openness to pain, the Bible calls us to trust God amid the suffering, knowing that there's a purpose for it. He uses it in our life. It's beauty out of the ashes. I don't care what you're going through right now. There's beauty that can come out of the ashes. In Romans it says, and we all know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. It doesn't say that God works for the good of those sometimes if everything goes right, if you're lucky. That's not what it says. It says, in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. He's got this. Turn towards your faith in the suffering. Number three, the Bible tells us we can find peace in the middle of our chaos. We can find peace in the middle of our chaos. When the outside world feels overwhelming and it feels like, we're just not going to be able to handle what comes next, Scripture points us to the peace that's only found in God. So this is Isaiah 26. You ready? I love this. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. You'll keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. Your mind is steadfast, not because you've got this and you can control all the outcomes and you can take care of everything and you can control your pain and you can always feel up here and everything's awesome all the time. No. You can stay steadfast when you trust in him. It's just this totally different paradigm. The truth is that many of us want to stay fast because we trust in us. In Mike, I trust, right? That's my motto most of the time. In Mike, I can figure this out. I know what can come next. I can sort of manage this. I don't have to feel this way. Guys, the reality is he's going to keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast and who trust in him. Number 4, I don't want to go into this too deeply, but you just can't be fully connected spiritually if you're hanging on too tightly to all the negative coping mechanisms. Like what God wants for us, he wants us to live in peace because we're turning towards our faith in the times of chaos, right? But in order for us to live in that peace and be steadfast in him, you kind of have to let go of the stuff that you've been hanging on to that in many ways define you. So think about all the addiction stuff I was talking about earlier. It's really, really difficult for you to fully just immerse yourself in that mindset that says, God, I'm fighting for the reality that you're here and that you're present and that you're going before me and you're preparing my way and that you've got me and you spoke the world into existence and everything's going to be okay because you're committed to me and to my family and to my kids. And it's hard to do that when you're intent on self-medicating. So some of you need to look at alcohol. Some of you need to look at drugs. Some of you, I get it. And if that's you, man, I encourage you, the sooner you look at that, the better your life is going to get. Trust me on that one. But it's not just drugs and alcohol. I'm talking about all the unhealthy coping stuff. There are people that are watching this right now, and you're so intent on just like materialism. I mean, it's just on some basic level. Let's talk about that. If I can get this, if I can get this car, if I can get that purse, then then I'm going to be okay. Or if I can get a new house, and we're trying and we're figuring this out, or if I can get that, and the truth is, man, what are you medicating your pain with? Or what are you medicating your lack of self-esteem with? Like, I don't feel good enough unless I've got what? I mean, all you're doing is putting yourself in a situation where you have to like continue to fill your tank up with something in order to feel okay about you, when the truth is, man, that's like trying to fill a bucket with water. It's got a hole in the bottom. You never stop. The quest never stops. Same with food. Same with porn. Like, name it. So if you wanna find peace in Christ in the midst of the pain that's normal in our world, you gotta let yourself sort of experience the pain and get rid of the negative coping mechanism. We'll do more on that for you guys. If you guys are struggling with an addiction, I would say don't do that on your own. I mean, that the research has proven that over and over and over again. I mean, you just are never going to be able to break free fully unless you're in community. So you need to get to someone that can walk with you, whether it's an AA group or a therapist. Our Live Well coach those guys are all trained and they're all ready to help you. So if you're in that situation where you're like, Mike, I want this psychological flexibility. I want to be able to just sort of like be open to everything that life has, and not be bogged down in fear of feeling and medicating that with drugs or alcohol or shopping, or just reach out to our Live Well coaches, and they can help. I mean, just they'll be an accountability. They'll give you some resources. It's a place to start, if nothing else, right? All right, number 5. We have to live fully through Christ. You have to live fully through Christ. So embracing the totality of life, the joys and hardships, is possible through the power of Christ. Look at Philippians 4. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. That's kind of a crazy statement. Paul's like bold. I'm going to say it again because it's just wild. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. If I said that as a psychologist, you guys would turn me off. You'd be like, this guy's a quack. Who can say that? They've learned how to be content in every situation. Paul did. He says, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. And see, I think that's the key here, is like, we believe that. Yeah, I know you believe that. Especially if you're a Christian, you believe I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Yeah, I get it. That's what I learned in Sunday school. The problem is, Mike, is that has zero relevance to my life because of all these challenges and all the things that I'm dealing with. And that's the stuff I can't handle. I just don't like thinking about it. So look, either it's true or it's not. You cannot pick and choose what parts of this book you ascribe to. Either it's all true or none of it's true. Either it's true that there's a God that spoke the world into existence, who created, who chose you out of all the combinations of DNA that he could have chosen. He chose you. You can't believe that. And then say, yeah, but what Paul was talking about, that's just unrealistic and it's not real and it's not consistent with my life. It's true. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And so the mindset shift is to say, okay, I can't control what's going on for me right now. I can't control, the sort of polarization of our politics, and I can't control my fear about what's coming next, and I can't control what my kid's doing that I don't understand, and my spouse is distant, and I can't control any of this. But what I do know, and what I trust more than anything, is that there's a God that loves me, that's here, that's with me, that's going to bring beauty out of the ashes. And we'll end with this. Number 6, there's an eternal perspective on suffering that solves a lot of this. Second Corinthians 4 says, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." It's crazy. Our light and temporary troubles. That's the translation I used to read all the time when I was a kid. My light and temporary troubles will work out for my good. That's wild. It's like, okay, wait, eternally, there's something beyond this moment. There's something beyond the brokenness. My buddy wrote a book. His name is Gary Moon. If you guys haven't read this book, it's an old one. You should grab it. It's called Homesick for Eden. The title says it all, right? You don't even have to read the book. Sorry, Gary. The title's so good, people don't even have to read the book. Homesick for Eden. That means that in all of us, there's something that we are just so desperately connected to, the idea of perfection and the idea of what my life should look like. And I shouldn't feel this way. And I shouldn't be struggling in this relationship. And I shouldn't have to, be so mad at my boss, or I shouldn't be so scared about money, or and in all of us, there's this idea that, man, I'm homesick for the perfection of living one-on-one, face-to-face with this God that created me and loves me and called me out. And I want you to know it's a super healthy thing if channeled in the right direction, because what that does is that gives you a vehicle to kind of transport yourself emotionally beyond kind of the light and momentary issue that you're dealing with, to say, okay, there's something beyond this, and there's a greater reality that exists outside of time and space, and that ultimately I know who wins. We know who wins this battle. Evil does not win this battle. There are some of you that you're kind of ticked off by this little Bible study today. And the reason you're ticked off is because, man, Mike, you don't even know what I'm dealing with. You don't understand how intense it is. You don't understand how evil it is. I'm dealing with an evil, but my spouse, I'm telling you, there's something beyond this world, and the story has been written. We're living in the Matrix, right? This is not the real reality is that this story has been written, and in the end, there's victory. There's victory beyond where you're at, beyond your stress, beyond this trouble. So just what I'd like you to think about is, to what degree are you struggling with this psychological inflexibility? Like this sense of, I don't like that. I can't stand the way I feel, and I don't like this, and I'm going to push it down, and I've got all these balls under the water, and I'm just kind of treading water. And if that's you, and by the way, that's all of us. what you need to do is find the areas that you're just not letting yourself just be really open with that psychological flexibility to say, okay, I can just take it all. I can understand my life is good and it's bad. There's some good things that are happening. There's some things that stress me out like crazy. But the way I'm going to approach this is with this deep, deep, deep sense that God, you're here and you're present with me. You're going before me, preparing my way, and that you will bring beauty out of the ashes. He will bring beauty out of the ashes, guys. We can trust that. You can trust that. You can take that to the bank. It might not be the way you want it. The outcomes might not be what you need them to be. There's a lot of things that can happen, and I get that. But he will bring beauty out of the ashes. So, what do we do about it? Number one, jump in our gratitude challenge. We've got, I think, 7 days left till Thanksgiving. There's plenty of time for you. You can jump in right in the middle. Go to the livewell-coaching.com platform. Sign up for that gratitude challenge. It's free. And just jump in, because that gratitude, like getting yourself full of gratitude, is going to help you. It's going to help you sort of like just begin to see in the midst of like all the stress and anger and frustration, all the stuff of this world that we can't control. There's some very real things to be thankful for. And then number two, if you get on that same website, livewell-coaching.com, on our, I think it's on the toolbar right at the top, there's a journal. Grab that journal and just start letting yourself journal some of your feelings every day. I know that sounds like such a psychologist thing to say, and I get it. If it didn't work, I wouldn't tell you to do it. I mean, it has been the hardest thing for me in my life to let myself just be kind of aware of my own emotion, right? It's I was not trained to do that growing up, but it works, man. If you just let yourself say, let me just write some of this down. What you're actually doing is you're taking each ball out from under the water intentionally and just kind of describing it, putting it up, and you don't have, it's not like you have that explosion of emotion anymore. You don't have all that tension trying to repress everything anymore. So writing that stuff down every day, just kind of say, every day I'll take 5 minutes. 5 minutes, write in the journal. And as you do that, you're allowing yourself to say, okay, I'm going to be flexible. I'm going to be open to see the good and the bad. And when I do that, you're actually going to have more control over your emotional life. And it's going to help you feel like you've got more control over your life and the outcomes. All right. I feel like we could have talked about this for, 3 or 4 hours. I hope it was helpful. Don't hesitate to send in a comment to us. livewell-coaching.com is the name of the website if you guys want to grab those resources. Don't forget, Monday we will be with you for another live mindfulness event. So Monday we're going to teach you how to calm your brain and your body down. We do that every Monday. So 12:15 Eastern time on Monday. We hope you're there.